not a lot of my colleagues did.
Welcome, everybody, to our webinar this afternoon. And we just kicked it off with not a lot of my colleagues did. Jim finished us off there. We probably should have just let it go and then seen, like what is the first sentence that people hear when we first go onto a webinar?
Oops.
You're good, Jim. You're good. What were we talking about? The hurricanes?
Hurricane that hit down there in Lee Collier County and then kind of flipped up and hit Sarasota, Bradenton. I think it was following another major hurricane that actually crossed the state just a few days earlier, right?
They all kind of run together at this point, but yes.
Yeah, living down here in the South, it's just kind of the way you expect it. We're coming up, in a few months on hurricane season again, but thankfully right now we're out of the weather, at least. The only thing I live in Georgia. We had a storm come through about a week ago where my wife and my boys, we all had to shelter down in the basement through the night because we knew what we're looking at is tornadoes coming through Texas. Typically in Atlanta, if you see tornadoes in Dallas or Houston, it's going to whip through Mississippi, Alabama, and then it's going to hit us.
There you go.
And so it usually happens about 2:00 in the morning, the worst time. And then, we shelter in the basement. But I digress. Kristen, please take it away.
Yeah. I think we should continue talking about tornadoes. Meg just chatted in. We had a tornado warning last night and it snowed this morning. Meg, where are you at? This is, let me back up a second. So we are in our webinar today, how to succeed when buying leads. So we're here with HomeBuddy and Bath Solutions. I am going to introduce our speakers in just a minute. But in the meantime, I'd love for you to chat in what company you are from or just your industry. And I also would love to hear what your role is. Are you a CSR? Are you a sales director, marketing director? It's always helpful to kind of know who we're talking to. And if you feel like it, put in, trying to think of a good question here. I was actually looking at ChatGPT because I was like, what are some good icebreaker questions? I'm not going to go with my Mario Kart one, but if you had a song that was a song that was like the soundtrack to your life right now, what would it be? That's kind of a complicated one. Jim, I immediately thought of you knowing that you just came off the plane. And I think running on empty is good for you because you were like, I haven't slept at all. If anybody has any song requests, Darian, do you got any? How are you feeling these days? Just chilling?
Yeah, just like we were all talking about, weather's starting to get a lot nicer. So something like a summer song, I guess, something like that.
Yeah, like I'm thinking of no, that's not even a summer song. I'm not even gonna try. I was thinking of a Nelly song. I don't know why. That's just weird. Anyway, Meg, thanks for chatting in Chicago area. Anybody else on the webinar, let us know who you are, where you're coming from, and what is your role. Meg, she's the AI and lead generating and email marketing person. So yes, you rent dumpsters and porta potties. So it sounds like you have a lot of hats. Michelle, roofing and home improvements. Songs, Spare Us the Cutter. Echo and the Bunny Ben. Great. Meg is Must Be the Money. Yes, that was the song that I was thinking about, Meg. Okay, cool. I'm glad you were on the same page there. I don't know why it's a summer song, and then we have Ellie, marketing coordinator from Richmond, Virginia. Great to have you on here, Ellie. Dave H, marketing manager, HVAC and plumbing. So sounds like we have a lot of marketing people on here. Michelle is the director of marketing. Robin is the office manager, exterior remodeling. Good to see you, Robin. I know I've seen you on a few webinars here. Gemma, CSR in San Francisco. Keep chatting in. We love to see who we're talking to here, and that can help us kind of cater some of our insights that we're sharing today. And without further ado, I am going to introduce our speakers here. So first of all, we have Jim Gefkin here from Bath Solutions. Jim, do you want to just give us a quick little spiel on who you are and a little bit about Bath Solutions?
Yep. Thanks, Kristen. So I'm Jim Gefkin. I am a career marketer having been on worked at advertising agencies and then several Fortune 500 clients. And as of last year, I have been the marketing manager for Bath Solutions, etc. We are a very small, family-owned and operated home improvement company specializing in bathroom makeovers. We're in Southwest Florida, which, for those of you who know the area, it's Naples and Fort Myers. And we are a licensed dealer of BCI acrylic. And so we have the territory, a pretty restricted territory of a 3-county area. So very, very small compared to the national competition that has presence in our market, but nonetheless challenging.
Great. Glad to have you here, Jim. We've had Jim on for a webinar, I think, was it back in November? I'll drop the link in for that recap too. Jim has a lot of great marketing insights to share. So I'll put that in there as well. And then we have Ryan Peterson here from Home. We actually have 2 people from HomeBuddy. So Ryan, I'll let you kind of kick it off. Tell us a little bit about HomeBuddy and share kind of your background.
Yeah, Ryan Pedersen, Director of Strategic Partnerships here at HomeBuddy. I've been with the company for a little over 2 years. I've been working in lead generation in the home services field for about 18 years. I started out in radio, then I moved to print, and I've been in digital performance marketing for about the past 6 years. Came here via another company. A little bit about HomeBuddy is that we kind of have 3 pillars. And I'm not going to try and sales pitch you guys today, so I don't want to bore you with all that, but I'll just say, we stand on a foundation of focus on quality, customer support, and exclusivity of leads.
Love it. And then we've got another HomeBuddy person on with us today, Darian.
Hey everyone, I'm Darian Bunce. I'm the partnerships team manager here at HomeBuddy. Coming up on 4 years at HomeBuddy at the company. So I manage a team of partnership managers who are the point of contact for our clients, who are able to assist them with managing their campaigns, answering questions, and just overall being that that point of contact, that touch point to really maximize your results with us. How I know Jim is that I'm the partnership manager for the account for Bath Solutions, etc. So Jim and I, work closely together to monitor their results and manage their active campaigns with us.
Love it.
Kristen, you want a fun fact?
Well, I would love a fun fact, but I just want to quickly call out Ray. Ray is here from Sugarman's Bath. Great to see you, Ray. And his song is Good Day by Forrest Frank. Now I'll take a fun fact, Ryan.
Okay, so number 1, my song that I've been listening to a lot lately is Till You Can't by Cody Johnson.
Okay.
I don't know why I got hooked on it this week, but I love that song. Also, Darian is so tall that when we have trade shows where I'm 5'10", and he's, what are you, 6'7", Darian?
Yeah, 6'6".
6'6". I have to stand on a chair to put our lights above our booth. Darian can do it from the ground. But having Darian at a show means that we don't have to hire, the union electrical workers to come out and hang the lights because it's a hazard, right? But if Darian's there, he can do it from the ground.
Which is why you guys hired him.
Oh, absolutely. And the fact that he played college ball.
Added benefit to the company for sure.
Yeah.
So I always wanted to meet Darian, and now I'm kind of second thinking that because I'm only 5'7", and if I stand next to him, that is not a good picture.
Yeah. Top of my bald head reaches his shoulder. That's how tall he is.
Wow. Fun fact and also a useful fact. So
yeah, I mean, I like to bring color.
That's good. That's good. Darian, you should definitely have that on your resume. Well, great. We are
the height stats.
Yeah, exactly. The height test. You must be this tall to ride this ride. We're really excited today. So I'm going to give you guys a quick little background. So like I said, we did a webinar with Jim a while back. So I'm pretty in close contact with Jim, and he's in close contact with HomeBuddy. And Jim has kind of been on a journey, kind of optimizing his own lead generation strategy, increasing spend, making sure that conversion kind of follows suit on that. So our goal here is just to kind of provide you with some insights. I have a pretty loose agenda. I'm going to give you like 3 bullet points that we're going to cover, but I encourage you guys to ask questions throughout, because we will answer them. That will help us guide the discussion. And then we'll also, anything that is like a little bit not irrelevant, but if it's not like directly related, we'll get to those in the end. So also Robin says that she's 5'2" and would sprain her neck. So Robin, Darian, maybe you guys just, you never know, Darian, when your next opportunity, maybe you could just do a side gig of assembling. So here's what I'm thinking. So I'm going to quickly talk about how Hatch and HomeBuddy integrate, just for those of you who may not be familiar. Then we'll talk about kind of having a good relationship with your lead provider. Jim and Darian are going to be able to kind of add some color there. Ryan talked a little bit about the 3 pillars, and I'm going to kind of pick his brain a little bit on what to look for in a lead provider, because there are definitely some bad actors out there. So I just want to kind of share some insights there to make sure that you are making the right decisions. We'll talk a little bit about data. Jim is really good at kind of looking, you can have the same numbers in front of 5 different people, and there's different ways that you can slice and dice that data. So Jim's pretty good at kind of exploring, you don't know what you don't know kind of thing. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll just cover some stuff on making sure you're converting those leads into appointments and getting the maximized value, right? So maybe they don't become an appointment right away and you want to get value out of those leads that you've paid for, or maybe they do turn into an appointment and they do turn into a customer. Well, how do you maximize their lifetime value? So that's kind of a loose agenda. And like I said, ask questions and we'll be happy to hear them. Cool. All right. So Hatch and HomeBuddy, the integration, quick overview here. Hatch integrates with your lead sources, right? So what we mean by that is it's a native integration. So if you are using something like a HomeBuddy, Hatch does not wait for the lead to enter into your CRM in order for you to reach out to that lead, because who knows how long that takes. There's different data syncs going on. And we know that you really need to reach out to a lead as soon as they come in, because as soon as I don't know about you guys, but sometimes, you fill out a form and you get contacted by a lot of different companies. So really making sure that you're the first person there is really important. So that's what that native integration is all about, is that Hatch can detect when a lead comes in through, in this case, HomeBuddy. So lead comes in, Hatch detects it, and then that outreach goes out right away. Sometimes before it even appears like on whatever other dashboard there is. So if you think of it kind of like lead source, Hatch, and then your CRM. So it can go into your CRM once it becomes an appointment or however you want it to be, but that's the real value there. So, and then the reason for that is then you can automatically outreach these leads. Multi-channel, multi-day, whatever. There's a lot of different multis, a lot of different outreach there. And we'll get into the more details on that a little bit, but that's just for you guys to understand how that integration works. So we work with Jim to make sure that he has the right messaging in place and is using, the right campaigns there. And then Jim works with HomeBuddy to ensure that he's getting the right leads and, tweaking things here and there to make sure that he's getting good quality out of those leads. I'd be interested too in the chat. Let us know if you are already using Hatch and or HomeBuddy. I'm just curious. And, if you're using Hatch, what are you using it for? Speed to lead? Are you using it for other use cases? I always love to hear that. All right, cool. So now I want to kind of move over to Jim and Darian. So this idea about having like a good relationship with your lead aggregator. So tell me a little bit about what you guys, how often do you guys meet? What do you talk about? Did we lose Darian? We lost Darian. Okay. Well, he didn't like that question.
But I can fill in.
He'll be back on. He'll be back.
Yeah, he'll be back
until
on.
he gets back.
Yep. So yeah, Jim, tell me a little bit about the relationship, and I'm just looking for some tips on how to make sure you're getting the most.
Yeah, so I have to take you back a second and to the moment of epiphany that I had when I first started working with Darian. And when I stepped into this role about a year or so ago, our company had several lead generators already in place. And what I discovered after touching base with each lead generator after I took over the program was that they hadn't had any data or conversation with us in about a year. And our company thought that, hey, you engage a lead generator, that's it. And I'm here to tell you, and if this maybe sound a little radical, but I think that your program will only be as successful as your contribution to the partnership. And I say that from a consumer of the lead. I believe firmly that that it's our obligation to share data regularly and have conversations with our partner, in my case, Darian, in order to have an effective program, because it's a journey together. It's not just we're going to buy a lead and see how it goes. It is, we've got to figure out a way that we are going to get the right information to you so we can just adjust along the way and share data with you regularly that you have insights from us. We can talk about all of those benchmarks that Darian and I go through, kind of what are those indicators. But I wanted to just say right out of the gate that your contribution to the partnership is going to help steer it into a positive direction.
Yeah, that's a great point, because, just because you're kind of having somebody else manage that for you, you still have to give them that feedback and kind of work together. So, so how often do you guys meet typically?
So when we first started our relationship, Darian, please correct me when I'm wrong, but when I was getting up to speed, we were meeting regularly just to understand the budget parameters, the campaigns that we needed to run, the scope of the territory, the definition of the territory, fine-tuning the zip codes, etc., and then just kind of monitoring the quality of the leads. Then we paired it back to twice a month, and now we're kind of on autopilot with one another because we understand each other's data and needs, that we're at a once a month meeting. But it is for a good 30 minutes to 45 minutes video conference call where Darian expects and I provide the data to review on lead quality, the dispositions of leads, and then we review the performance KPIs, conversion rates, etc.
Exactly. Yeah, Jim, you kind of hit it right on the head. When you initially came on board, just to kind of get you up to speed on exactly how things work with us and where the account was meeting, almost on a weekly frequency. Then we switched to bi-weekly, and then once we got in a spot where things are really just performing well consistently, and there's not as much need to kind of make tweaks or make adjustments to to the target area or budgets and things like that. Now we just have our monthly meeting with can always meet ad hoc if needed. Jim and I obviously have each other's contact info, so if there is something urgent that comes up or just a simple question that needs to get asked, we do have that ability to communicate. And that's has worked really, really well for us. And the reports that Jim was mentioning really help to see the visibility. One thing that we really push for is when we send leads to our partners, if we're not receiving the kind of reports and feedback from them, we don't really have a visibility or know what was the outcome of that lead. So we're kind of flying blind. But when we do get that feedback through the data, such as like Jim provides, we're then have a really clear picture of this is how the campaign is performing for the contractor.
Yeah, I can say that nothing would be worse than being Darian and having a customer call and say, well, our leads stink, they're not working. Well, that's pretty broad. You may feel that as a customer, but give him the reason why. Look at your data and help him understand why you have that perception. And the data will usually tell the story.
Yeah. And going back a
Kristen,
second.
if you wouldn't mind, I just wanted to jump in real quick on that.
Please
because
do.
Prior to working, now I'm in a marketing role at HomeBuddy. Previously, I was in an enterprise sales role at HomeBuddy. And the disposition reports and the data provided with the lead ID tags, okay, so now I work for a head of media buying. at HomeBuddy. It's our chief marketing officer here at HomeBuddy. The way that I've explained this to people is, imagine flying on a transatlantic flight, from New York to London, and you have no control panels, you have no measurements or instruments. How do you know where you're going, right?
Yep.
And Jim laid it out really well there, in that data is of the utmost importance, right? We need to know what is coming in from what lead ID, from what specific area, from what kind of demographic. And then once we see that we're delivering leads to Jim that are high convertible leads, then we're going to focus in on that. That's really HomeBuddy and what we do. Jim, if we see stuff that's, a different type of demo and it's just not working, we're just not going to focus on it. We're going to pull back. We're going to really focus on what we know is going to end up becoming revenue for our clients, book jobs. And so in anybody on the call, I see we have 18 attendees here, but at HomeBuddy, we really focus on set, issue, demo, booked. Those are the 4 key metrics, along with lead ID. Because what does that ultimately mean, right? You got to set the appointment. You can't issue the appointment, Jim, right? If you don't have both mortgage holders present, maybe you do your CSRs reach out and they look at a soft credit pool and you see that there's just not the available funds for the job. Let's say it's $17,000 walk-in shower job, right? You probably won't issue that appointment if you can't get both, or maybe the individual mortgage holder, or again, if it's a renter. And like you said, you're just north of Naples. I'm assuming, is that like Fort Myers area?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. But let's say you got a renter in Fort Myers and they're telling you, oh no, I got authorization from the homeowner in Bradenton, who's 45 minutes up the road, probably, right? 45 minutes to an hour. You don't want to send your resources out to a homeowner. You don't want to run that. You don't want to issue it. You don't want to run it. It's a waste of time.
Right.
And even though they say, oh no, I've been authorized, that's still not something HomeBuddy wants to send to them. And then ultimately want that demo in place and then the booking rate. And so that's kind of where our core focus is centralizing in on that key demographic that's converting at HomeBuddy. And I'm pitching, I apologize, I'm pitching, but the point being is, just for anybody on this call, for your lead sources, make sure that whoever you're using as your lead aggregator is not just trying to deliver you just some lead. And Kristen, you kind of talked on this earlier in the call about kind of the nature of lead aggregation and bad players. Mm-hmm. And HomeBuddy's core focus is to remain a good player and deliver quality to our clients.
Totally. Yeah. And I'd say too, if you can kind of think of it like, every kind of lead provider, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, Darian or Ryan, but like your lead profile is going to be different per customer. So there's like a few different sources you can pick and choose. It's like a little recipe, right? Mm-hmm. So when Jim tells you this does really good, then you're like, okay, we can throttle this, this ingredient that works really well. We can dial that up. This one, we can dial that back. So like you said, there's just different profiles that will make sense. And without that data, you don't know what to scale up or back.
Flying blind without the data.
So, and I would add to what Ryan said, our KPIs align exactly with what Ryan just articulated. And I would say that one of the reasons that we continue in partnership with HomeBuddy is the very first KPI and the most important one, which is the set rate. That's probably going to be the most telling of all of your KPIs on the quality of the lead, that you're going to be able to get to them and get an appointment set as quickly as you possibly can. And HomeBuddy's set rate KPI with us is about 22%, and that's way above our average with the other lead generators. So we know there that we're getting some pretty good leads. The rest of it, as you go farther down the funnel, gets a little bit more complicated to put back on your lead generator and say, well, the lead wasn't good. It's a lot of other different people touch it. The call center, how fast are they? Or can you verify whether you can run this? Is the person home? How good is your sales team in converting that? But I look at right out of the gate, when I'm having a review with Darian is, where are you guys on set rate? Because I can
Yeah.
pretty much associate that to them.
Yep, that's a
So,
great point. And
Kristen, let me jump in real quick and just say,
Yeah.
this is, let's pitch Hatch for a second here, right? The reason why I like our partnership with your organization is because you make us look better to our clients. Jim's over here talking about set rates, which is really, it's, the quality of the lead, Jim, that we deliver to your organization. Once it gets into your CSRs and you start getting into the issue and demo and booking rate, that's really internal sales team, right?
Yep.
It's not much HomeBuddy can do at that point. But what Hatch can do is Hatch can get in front of that. And I'll just kind of talk to the audience here. Kristen, you said speed to lead, right? You're pretty much the organization that coined that term. And now there's a lot of lead nurture devices out there and services that can do what you guys can do, but you're the OGs and you're at the kind of the forefront. There's a guy who works internally for Hatch. His name is Jason Dolan. I've worked with him. He's shown me some really cool stuff that you guys are doing. And the reason why I like Hatch so much is because you're able to showcase HomeBuddy in a better light to our clients, because you're able to, I'm a homeowner, I'm in front of my computer, I'm on my phone, I'm punching in information, I'm interested in a certain type of job, walk-in showers, let's just use that, talking to Bath Solutions today, so let's just talk about that. And then within a minute, maybe they, they're typing in their form, their information, they hit submit, maybe they're still at their computer, but Hatch is getting in front of them immediately. You're grabbing the immediacy of the leads. Because Kristen, you probably know this from case studies at Hatch, the precipitous drop of conversion rates after a minute, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, 6 hours. That's where Hatch comes into play, because you're getting them right when they submitted it, right when they're excited about what they're doing. Jim, you got somebody that's got a 3-walled enclave, old tub, 25-year-old tub, and they're envisioning the excitement of getting this new walk-in shower, right? And then they submit the lead, it comes to them, and it's immediate action. They're moving on it quickly. Hey, what can we do to do this? And with HomeBuddy, with the fact that we send an exclusive lead, is they're not going to be hammered down in those first 10 minutes by 5 other contractors. And then what do you end up with, Jim? You end up shrinking your margins and you're not getting the revenue you seek to desire. I assume that would be the case.
That's right.
Yeah. So we, I plan to get into it a little bit later, some of those best practices, but we can reverse this order here. This is the slide that Ryan is kind of speaking to here. And there's a lot of people on this call who are using Hatch Speed Delete, so would love for you guys to chime in here too. But, in a nutshell, the things that you need in order to get like a response, this person fills out a form, that does not mean that they are going to respond right away if you reach out to them. So the things that you need in order to get a response are, the message needs to come in fast. It needs to be personalized and short, and it needs to be multi-channel and multi-day. So you're not just calling them all day, like 18 times. You're, texting them, calling them, emailing them. Next day, you see in the visual here, you text them, maybe you pause on day 3, then you pick it up on day 4. So there's kind of a cadence and a deliberate intention there. And then when they respond, you are continuing to, when they respond, you continue to respond back and keep it prompt and timely. So, this is what Ryan is kind of speaking to. And that is what will help you with your set rates, because the more you got to get your response rates up first in order to get your set rates. I want to back up for a second. First of all, so KPIs. So talking about the sharing the data. So correct me if I'm wrong. So the data that you share, Jim, with HomeBuddy is like set rate. It's set rate, issue rate, demo rate, and booked. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there like a template that you guys gave Jim, or is it like, what does that look like? Is it like a spreadsheet that you send over every week, or?
Well, we were doing it that way, and I do have it set up in spreadsheet format to give them that that data, but really through our CRM Lead Perfection, the reporting comes over automatically. So
okay, great.
we're set up so that HomeBuddy has visibility into all of the lead dispositions as well as call results on a daily basis for a
Okay.
90-day look back. So they can at the same time I can crunch the data and see where performance is. But then on our monthly calls, I kind of do a little bit of a digest of that and show where we are against plan.
Okay, great. So that was going to be my next question for you, Darian, and even Ryan. So, you know, I know Jim pretty well, and I know he's pretty thorough and very diligent. So I can imagine that he's probably like a model client type deal. So like what, you know, for people on this call who are looking to like be a good client for a lead aggregator or a lead provider, or a lead generator, like, is there anything else, not to put you on the spot, Jim, or is there anything that Jim does that like is particularly helpful? Like, does he also add color? Like, is that monthly digest that he does? Do not all clients do that? Like, what are some of the things that he does that other people don't do that are helpful?
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. Yeah, Jim is an awesome client to work with. Definitely, one of our favorites, and him and I have built a really nice rapport through our regular meetings. Providing not only the daily reporting, which is really crucial. That way, I'm always looking at the most up to date data, and I'm not having to kind of wait for one to come in and kind of be behind. But then also on our monthly meetings, having it kind of broken down for just that specific month or whichever date kind of date range we're looking at. Another kind of aspect that works really well, and I really credit Jim with this, is being patient with and making sure that we're looking at a large enough sample size. So, for example, when we used to meet bi-weekly, Jim wasn't going to be taking a 2-week sample and deciding whether the campaign was working or not based off of a 2-week sample size, or even just looking at it on a monthly sample size, because as I'm sure pretty much everyone on this call knows, things can fluctuate. One month might be double the amount of sales as the next month, and there sometimes isn't necessarily a right or wrong reason for that. Things fluctuate, but we want to look at kind of the largest sample size of data as we can, because then that gives us kind of the truest picture of is this performing or not.
Yeah.
So having that kind of patience and understanding of, okay, we're not going to look at just what happened last month or 2 weeks in a silo. We're going to add that in the context of the whole quarter, or the whole year, or whichever kind of review we're doing.
I think that's an important point, because I think so often it would be the tendency of a client, somebody in my position, to look at a single month in isolation and say that was a fail. Well, we know that the way that leads are tracked from when they come into your CRM or when they first enter the system, that it can sometimes take longer to convert. You may set it right away, but you may set it for 2 weeks out. And though we like to set appointments next day, within 48 hours, ideally, that's not 100% under our control. So it may take a while for these leads to marinate and then show up as a sale in your system. So while what I've said, and it's an expression that I use of don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, is that, hey, you are going to get some variation in your performance if you're tracking it monthly or weekly. It's going to take a little bit of time to marinate. And if it's taking an exceptionally long time to marinate, then you probably need to look at some of the other functions in your organization, such as your call center and then your sales staff. So you've really got to kind of conform your expectations to what your internal infrastructure is, rather than just assume that the leads stink.
Yep.
if you have a low performance rate. So, I mean, I was just looking at, and I share, Darian is right on point. I share that data, the KPI data, but I like to look at it kind of like at a 12-month look back and see what the average is over time, rather than say, oh, this month it was great, and this month we were up, this month we were down. That doesn't mean that the leads are inconsistent, because there are a lot of different factors that influence. Right. And I also like to be able to show trends, because I think that trends are important. And maybe I take this a little too far because that's my personality.
Never take it too far with data, Jim.
But what I do is I share with Darian the trends of what the lead count is month to month to month, so that we can see, are there dips that are seasonal, or something else is going on. And I also look at the cost per sale and the cost of marketing as a percentage to show the trend. And so I would say to, like, I'll just pick one out of the sky here, but we had 1 month, June last year, which, there was a 6% cost of marketing. Well, that's fantastic, right? But then the next month was 36%. You can't just say, oh my God, their performance is terrible. There's too many influencing factors there. So it's good to keep your eye on all that stuff to identify problems, but usually you can figure it out with your data.
Yeah. And I'd like to add too, that, when Jim and I first met, we were, he had started using Hatch AI, and I was like, let's do a success story. And I wanted to get a feel for how things were. And in what Jim had gone over with me with his data was, they had originally, in the beginning of 2024, they had ramped up their lead spend a lot. And he had looked, to his point, he had looked at the trends, the month over month, and like across a good time span, it was actually inversely related. So as lead volume went up, conversion rates went down. And that can be somewhat natural too. We know that, like, your website and organic leads may be a little bit high, like a little bit more relevant or higher intent than some of these third-party leads. But that was one of the biggest impetuses for Jim, being like, am I using Hatch really the best way? And it's not just about the lead volume. It's about how are you treating those leads, and then what are you doing with them further along down the line?
That's exactly right. We saw, our natural inclination was the more leads, the more conversions we're going to have, but that wasn't true. And what we learned from that lesson was, let us nurture the leads that we have and work them, versus just get a whole bunch of leads in that we're either not going to be able to get to, overwhelming our call center, overwhelming our sales force. So in this case, less is more. You have to be able to find the balance. We can talk about forecasting in a little bit, but understanding what your number is, the number of leads that you need to meet your goals, and then having an understanding from your lead generation partners what the market will bear, is another discussion to have.
Yeah, I think so far the takeaways, like, especially because we know that, like, third-party leads, lead buying can be a difficult thing. And some people, it can be a really hot topic. They're like, the leads that I get are terrible. And it's like, well, first of all, did you vet your lead aggregator? And we're going to get to that, Ryan, I want to kind of pick your brain on that I want to pick up your brain on that later. Then it's a matter of less is more, like Jim is saying. So you curate your lead aggregator, then you also make sure that you are having a good relationship with them and sharing that data, being thorough there. And then you're making sure that you're taking care of the leads that are actually coming through for you. And then from there, you're also looking at your metrics, not just the quality of the leads and those types of things, but what are your engagement metrics with those leads? How fast are your reps getting to them? How many touches are you doing? So there's a lot of careful thought that goes into this. And, the messaging that you use for your website leads is probably going to be a little bit different than the messaging that you use for your HomeBuddy leads. Like, it's just the nature of those leads. So being aware of that and kind of catering your messaging there is really important. So Jim, I want to talk about the forecasting. Before we get to that, Ryan, I do want to ask for your kind of, what are maybe like 3 things, like if somebody on this call is looking at vetting a lead aggregator, like what are some good questions to ask that lead aggregator to kind of put them through like the right screening?
Yeah, any good lead aggregator is going to have data for you. They're going to know, Jim, you're running a dispo, industry lingo, dispo report, disposition report on HomeBuddy, and where we're setting, where we're issuing, demoing, and booking. But he's also going to be running that. Jim, I'm assuming you're using other lead aggregators as well, not just HomeBuddy. You're not reliant just on us alone. So then what you'll have is it could be anywhere from 3 to 5 to 10, 15. We have some clients that are upwards of 45 to 60 that are running multiple lead aggregation programs, right? And some may be absolute volume players. When I say volume, is they're going to deliver you hundreds, if not thousands in the month. And then some will deliver you hundreds. Some will deliver you less than 100, right? But always set benchmarks. What's the average? What's performing, what's not, and what is your benchmark for success as a contractor? What's working for you? And then ultimately with HomeBuddy, kind of what we try and do on our end is we try and get our clients to 300 leads. Because once we get them to 300 leads, then we have a very low churn rate. They typically stay with us because we talk a lot about numbers and data at HomeBuddy, the randomization of numbers. You could come on board with us. Like, let's say, Jim, let's say you didn't just have Lee Collier, or are you just in Lee or?
Lee Collier in Charlotte.
In Charlotte County. All right. But let's say you were up in Manatee, Sarasota, Hillsborough, Polk, Lakeland, all those areas. Let's say you had a massive footprint, 500-600 zip codes. Let's say you were going across the Everglades into Fort Lauderdale and Miami. What we're ultimately trying to get our people to do is get them to that number at 300, because at that point in time, the averages work out. And what are we trying to do? We're trying to deliver a 7-to-1 minimum ROI, 15% or below net marketing costs. That's what HomeBuddy's goal is. With people like Darian and his team, that's ultimately their job, to communicate with the media buying team to keep those costs low and increase the ROI. How's that come? Disposition reports. Also, we want to know, like Jim, I've been on a conversation with you and Darian on this, but I'm assuming you're sharing how HomeBuddy is performing, and then you're showing like a benchmark performance of all your other lead aggregators. So for anybody out there on the call that's looking to buy leads, I would say, try different sources, give it some time. Don't just let it, I think maybe it was you, Jim, saying 2-3 weeks in, but give it some time to bake. And if you do not see performance increase, well then cut them off, move on, right? But try different lead aggregators. Now I will say this too, and I don't want to take up all the air in this conversation, but as you guys know, TCPA compliance was supposed to come in force about 2 months ago. And if anybody on this call doesn't understand what that is, that's the Telephone Consumer Protections Act. I think it comes from like the 80s, from the FCC. What it ultimately means is we were going to come into a place on January 26th, 27th, Darian, I think, right? Somewhere around then, where HomeBuddy delivers a lead, but we're letting the homeowner know that this is going to be the contractor that's going to reach out to you. Now, there are other lead providers and lead aggregators that what they're going to do is they're going to send you a lead, but it's going to be a shared lead. So what you're looking at is 3 or 4 other contractors reaching out to that homeowner within the first 5 minutes that you're reaching out to that homeowner. And they may send it on to 2 additional lead aggregators who will then send that lead on to 2 or 3 more. So you have a homeowner going from an excited place of a new project in their home, and now they're getting just bombarded with phone calls. And so it goes from a feeling of excitement and exuberance about a project, and then now they're dreading it because all they're doing is getting hammered with phone calls. So when HomeBuddy talks exclusivity of leads, that's kind of like the key function which I sell on. And I'll just give you guys an example. I'll stop talking in a second. But my wife and I had a backyard project that we did recently, about a year ago. We pulled out a HELOC for equity out of our home. Once the company that I was working with to provide us that loan ran a hard credit pool, this was on a Tuesday morning at 8:30. I remember this distinctly because I was at a trade show. From Tuesday morning at 8:30 to Friday at 5 p.m., I'd received over 200 phone calls and text messages, just absolutely hammered by other brokers. That really diffuses the excitement of the project. So I would tell any contractor out there, be careful about who you're working with as far as a lead aggregator goes and who else they're sending that lead to. Give them time. You know, if they're only sending it to one, or if they're sending it to 2 or 3, make sure that they're not sending it to multiple aggregators, because those aggregators will send it on. But there's also a kind of a lead generation, and I say this from my whole career standpoint of working in lead gen, is there's a lot of bad players in the industry that have kind of stained us. And Jim, you probably, I think, would agree with me on this, that there's a negative stigma about lead generation and the shadiness that can be done. Just know who you're working with and then who they're working with. Also, set metrics, expectations, and then also follow up with them. And if they're not meeting those metrics and those expectations, cut them off, move on. You can always find another lead generator. But with regards to kind of going back to TCPA compliance, what I was hoping for, it didn't go into effect. There was some 13th Circuit Court of Appeals, whatever, killed it for another year. What I was hoping for is that it would drown out all the bad players in this industry in lead generation. I thought it would be good for HomeBuddy, because also anybody else is legitimately delivering good leads and quality to their clients. But that is not in effect yet. So be careful about anybody you're working with. I'm not going to say be wary of overseas, because technically HomeBuddy's overseas, right? Darian's in Boston. I'm in Atlanta. Most of our North American team, Darian, 35 of us or so, we're here. But be careful about who you work with and the legitimacy of their leads. And I'll kind of put it there without getting into too much trouble. But yeah, be careful about who you work with. Verify them, conduct your due diligence on them. Don't just hear a salesperson pitch it out.
Right.
Find out about them. Learn a little bit more about them.
Yeah, I would caution everybody that you probably have been pitched a number of times by these lead wholesalers that are like, I can get you 50,000 leads for 4 cents a lead. Well, that sounds great when compared to the cost of the more tried and true lead generators. And that's very tempting, but you don't know how old those leads are, how many times they've been resold, the efficacy of them. I mean, we've all been burned by those, and those types of lead providers are dancing right now because they thought that they were going to get shut down by TCPA, exactly. And they got another lease on life for the next year. So they're hot and heavy to sell.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to, we're coming up on time. And so Jim, I want you to talk a little bit about the financing, and because I know a lot of times on our webinars, people do have questions and are curious about like KPIs and things like that. Two things that I was going to share that I will include in the recap, a messaging best practices guide. So in addition to like, you know, a customer getting like a million gazillion messages from different companies, there also is something to be said about your messages that come through. Like we always, you know, reinforce constantly following up multiple times and reaching out a lot, but there's a way to do that so that it's I always say persistent but not pesky, and so that you're reaching out like with class, right? So I've got a guide that kind of goes through like really like specific best practices, right? Like how long should it be, what should you say, like, you know, and just random things that like you may not quite think, but, you know, I go through our platform all the time, and some of the messages that I do see in there, you know, we've got pretty good best practice templates based on data. But sometimes when you modify them, like it can get a little bit dicey, right? So I kind of went through and I was picking up on certain patterns and I put together a guide. So I'll share that in the webinar recap that we put out, and that has good examples in there for that. And then we do have a bunch of templates that, even though they are in our platform, we provide them for anybody. You don't have to be a Hatch user to send out, you know, the template that we use. So that can help you with your response rates and creating a good experience for your customers. Jim, talk to me a little bit about, you were talking about forecasting. So what are some of your insights there?
Yeah. So I think that it's really important to, if you are in charge of generating leads in your role, that you have a clear understanding from your leadership of what their revenue goals are, and then the math to work backwards to find out how many leads you have to purchase or to generate on your own. So what I like to do on a monthly basis is list all of my lead sources with my paid lead gens up at the top, and then with all of the, maybe another category is trade shows or home shows. And then the other category would be any other type of marketing, whether it's online marketing or offline marketing, or, you know, a referral program that you may be doing locally, and forecast how many leads you think that each source is going to deliver, and see where it adds up to where your goal is. Now, with lead generators, depending on what your budgets are, what I like to do is to find out what that number is and assign the number to each of the lead generators. But then you have to have a discussion with your lead generator partner to make sure that that's a reality. Because if I'm saying, I'm making this number up, right? But I need 100 leads from HomeBuddy this month. I better be sure that they're in the marketplace that I do business, that there are 100 leads to be had out there, because that's going to fluctuate, right? So that's a conversation that I will have with Darian when I'm setting my budget for the month. We've had a pretty consistent budget in our relationship, but there may be times when I need more leads than in other months. And I will say, before I just arbitrarily raise my lead budget by $2,000-3,000, is it even going to deliver? Are there hot zones out there where we can adjust? What are you seeing? And every third-party lead generator, I won't say every, but the ones that are the good ones will have some insight into what the market will bear, because you don't want to come up short at the end of the month when you say, hey, my lead generator, I've budgeted enough to get 100 leads, but they've only been able to deliver 70 to us. That would tell me that they weren't there in the first place.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, you know, to summarize some of the stuff that Ryan was saying, and then to add in from you, Jim, you know, Ryan was saying that a good lead provider is going to be able to give you some like numbers, right? They can work with you. So if you do your homework and you say, here are my expectations based on my benchmarks, and then HomeBuddy or whatever your lead aggregator, they can be able to say, all right, we can work with that. Like, we are looking to deliver 7-to-1 ROI or 15% marketing cost. Now you have some expectations, right? Exclusivity of those leads, making sure that they are compliant aware. You'd be surprised at how many players in the industry are not compliant aware. And then having that predictability and insight into the market. So to Jim's point, if you're going to say like it's the same thing if you're running like Google ads or LinkedIn ads, like raising your budget isn't always going to make a difference. So asking questions ahead of time, not once you've already started paying and using their services, like, what do you do to stay on top of market trends? What do you typically see for this? Like, you know, kind of test them and ask questions that will help to surface what their knowledge is.
Yeah, and when I call Darian and I say, hey, if I spend another $2,000, am I going to see a proportional amount of leads come in? And he sometimes will say, no, that is not going to do it. What we see is some competitors out there who are outbidding you in the cost per lead. You may want to adjust your lead cost by $2, $3, $5 and see if that helps in the equation to help you get the number of leads. But we have that discussion on which lever to pull to drive volume, and it's important.
Yeah, and it clearly takes two people. Like, they have knowledge that you don't have, and you have knowledge that they don't have. So it really has to be a partnership. And then, Jim, so you're saying that you back into your goal, right? So you kind of start at like, here's my revenue goal, and this is how many leads I need. And if this is how many leads I need, this is where I'm expecting them to come by source.
Correct. And then I will use my historical analysis on, you know, what we've budgeted before with somebody else might be 5,000, and with HomeBuddy, it might be 5,600. And I kind of tweak the numbers based on the insights that the lead generator provides. Like
Right.
one of the big ones said to me, for my $5,000 budget, we can't deliver that this month. What we're seeing with shower conversions and bathtub conversions in your specific geography is a market forecast of $3,100, which is much less than my budget. So then I have to adjust to a $3,100 market forecast versus what my budget is, because I know I'm not going to hit what the budget was.
Yep, that makes sense. So we have 5 minutes left. I want to encourage questions. If there's a lot of questions, I'm happy to just, I don't know if you guys have a hard stop, but I want to answer some of these questions. And before I do, I want to launch this poll. So this is, if you are a Hatch, if you want to learn more, if you're not a Hatch customer or HomeBuddy customer and you want to learn about either one or both, you can raise your hand. Or if you are an existing Hatch or HomeBuddy customer and you still want to talk to somebody about like making sure you're doing the best practices. I know sometimes, our own Hatch customers will reach out and they just want to make sure they're optimizing their account. Raise your hand. We will have the appropriate person reach out to you and get you taken care of. So that poll will be up. And like I said, option C is for both. If you want to be reached out to by both. We have, let's see.
You have a question that came in from Alan Benzaqueen, but I before you address that question and the questions come in, I just wanted to talk about one more thing that you had brought up, Kristen, and that was compliance.
Yeah.
So even though TCPA has been pushed back a year, there are still compliance issues with outreach that contractors need to know about with, they can get their own legal to review. But essentially, you do not want to be out of compliance and reaching out to somebody illegally, because you could be fined. And that's happening in the industry. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to make, the contractors on this call aware of that you brought that up. Also, I wanted to make them aware, and again, I'm going to pitch Hatch, is that you guys have a ton of great data. And anybody who's in here in the chat and on this call that's currently utilizing Hatch, make sure to ask your account manager for what they have, because the data that I've gotten from Hatch is fantastic. And I've shared it internally with our teams as far as, conversion rates go and what they could expect. So like, I'll be quiet after this, but just 2 points. One, definitely make sure you're compliant. Do not be in violation. You do not want to get hit with a fine. And number 2, reach out to Hatch and ask them for the data, for their case studies. It's fantastic stuff. It's great work.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Ryan. And I also, Ryan's brought up a few things. We have a compliance guide. We have a compliance checklist. So all these things, I will include them in the recap so that you can have something to refer to. We have a question here from Alan. Do you feel Hatch is enough for speed to lead, or should we also call within 5 minutes? Any suggestions on how to organize the call center to get this done? Alan, I'll quickly answer this, and then you guys can add color as well. For your Hatch campaigns, Alan, it sounds like you are a Hatch customer. To answer that, our templates are text and email, but traditionally people do like to add in a call in there as well. And I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but we do have for this very reason, we have come out with a new feature where you can add a call step to your campaigns. So in the workflow builder, and you're like, on day 1, I want it to be a text. On day 2, I want it to be a text and an email. Or let's say on day 1, you want it to be a phone call and a text. You can add in a call step. So then it'll come up on your workspace and it'll tell you to make a call, and you can make that call right in Hatch. And I will say that a lot of people do like to combine phone calls with text and email. Jim, I'm assuming you probably do something similar.
Yeah, you have to find the right balance. I mean, we do Hatch text first, followed by a phone call, and then later in the day we send an email. But we don't do it every day indefinitely,
right?
Because that'll drive the customer crazy and drive them away. I mean, we did an audit about our outreach to customers, and in one, 4-day period, we had reached out to a customer through various means 22 times. Well, that's way too much.
Yep.
So we had to pull back on that. Everybody wants to be aggressive, but you have to think about the customer experience that you're creating and how you would want to be contacted.
Yep.
Before you just set it loose.
Yeah, exactly. And Alan, if you are, I apologize that I don't know this, but if you are a Hatch customer, feel free to reach out. You can respond to my email or reach out to your account manager. Based on, it kind of depends on how big your call center is and what your business model is. There's different solutions that work for different people. Like I've interviewed customers that, it's a text, an email, and a phone call all on day one. And it also depends on like your bandwidth. So we would be happy to work with you and kind of share insights on what companies of the similar size and structure are doing. Another question is how many leads, Jim, if you're comfortable with sharing, how many leads do you handle or receive on an average month?
Well, it varies, but based on our revenue goals, we are probably looking at, we need about 450 leads a month in order to reach our goals. So it's a combination of third-party gens and what we're doing on our own, as well as our own organic, website leads. So I would say right now we're pretty heavy on the third-party lead gens because we don't have the resources internally to do a lot of the other activities. It's a moving target, but for us, and again, it's based on our revenue goals, about 400 to 450 is the magic number.
Got it. And so, yeah, Alan, you are a Hatch and HomeBuddy customer. Great. So Alan, I'll connect you with your account manager from Hatch and just make sure they're aware that you're kind of thinking through those things, and we'll see what we can do to help you there. I do want to share one more thing before we hop off. Just because this is something that I think is really important. I'm going to just go a couple slides back. So this is really important to look at, right? So we've been talking about lead generation and set rates, and that's really important, but you are paying for every lead. So if you were to think about it, like if you pulled the money out of your pocket for every lead and like gave it to somebody for that lead, like it would feel a little bit different, right? And so it is really important to make sure that you are not only reaching out to those leads right away, but nurturing them throughout the entire customer journey. And this is what Jim and I talked about in one of our first webinars. But this is a great way to visualize it, right? So like once you have that lead, you're reaching out to them right away. That's your speed to lead. If they have booked an appointment with you and they've done an estimate, you've got to follow up. That's your estimate follow-up. If they never booked an appointment, or if they booked an appointment but canceled, like you should be reaching up. You should be following up on those leads. Once they become a customer, you should be following up. Hey, your appointment's coming up, or your install is here, keeping them in the loop. Once the job is complete, hey, how did that go? Do you have any feedback for us? This is proactive, personalized communication across their entire journey. This is what is going to turn a lead not only into an appointment, but into a sale and into a repeat customer, into a reviewer, a person who leaves a review, and keeps coming back to you and recommends you to other people. And then another big one is, when you're going through a slow season or a slow week, you want to be able to kind of drum up opportunities on your own that, if there are market fluctuations like Jim was talking about, you don't have any control over that, but you do have a database that you can actually kind of drive revenue out of. So being able to go back in and mine your database. So remarketing to your existing customers. Hey, do you have any new projects coming up? Hey, we're doing a sale, like, you drum up some engagement that way. And then if you are more on like the HVAC side of things and you do memberships, like reaching out and being like, hey, you're due for your prepaid membership and recurring service. So this is so key to making sure that you are getting the highest return on your lead investment.
Yeah, and I would say absolutely make sure that your messaging is adapted to every different stage in the customer journey. You're probably going to handle your rehash messaging a whole lot different than you are your speed to lead messaging.
Yep.
And you're going to handle your cancellation messaging a whole lot different also in order to get them back on the calendar. We offer a $50 gift card to Publix just for somebody to keep their appointment. Now, I'm not going to give $50 to everybody that comes into the pipeline, but to get somebody back on the calendar, that may motivate them.
Yep.
It may not work in your market, but think about it.
Yep. So
And
it's all
just
about segmenting and tailoring. Go ahead, Ryan.
I was just gonna say, just so everybody knows, Publix is a grocery store down here in the South. Headquartered, I believe, Jim, in Orlando, right?
Nearby. Yeah.
Nearby, there in that area.
Lakeland.
But yeah, that's great.
Excellent color there, Ryan. Adding some good color there. Great. Well, I will not give you any more slides. I'm going to shut this off. We don't have any other questions. So like I said, this recording will go out to you probably within the next half an hour or so, but we will be doing a more, a written recap that will also have a link to the recording so you can get those resources as well. Ryan, Darian, Jim, I want to thank you for your time today. This was great.
It was good. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you for hosting and inviting us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was great. Thanks, Kristen.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Y'all be good.